This next panel is going to be one to really delight all of us, no matter where you are on your sales and careers journey. This is all about breaking the glass ceiling. And this is a Rising Star panel, and it's not just about entry-level stars, but wherever you are, how you're rising and how your star is really kind of moving and accelerating to the next level. So I'm excited to be a part of this panel, hear this panel, and we're gonna hear from some incredible leaders in different areas, not all necessarily sales, coming from different areas and aspects of the sales force. Leading this panel for us today is gonna be Natasha Arrington. That's your colleague. You know when it's the real champion. Natasha Arrington is a director at Workday. So please welcome Natasha to the stage. Thank you, Natasha.
All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for hanging in there and joining us for the Rising Star panel. I'm excited and I'm pumped to lead a conversation and share the stage with four amazing, successful, beautiful women that are trailblazing their careers. So I'm going to invite my panelists on stage and kick off this conversation. We'll spend a couple of minutes introducing each one of them one by one. All right, well, first we have Mindy Lembert. Mindy is a senior manager of sales at Motive, and she's coming to us from Southern California. Throughout her career, she's had the opportunity to not only lead sales teams, but to also build sales teams from the ground up. Now, throughout that experience, she's learned a lot about developing a strong voice and a strong point of view while maintaining her focus on people and culture. I love that, Mindy. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Next we have Nakea Tyson. Okay, TikTok. Nakea is joining us from TikTok, and she's also from Southern California. She's a brand partnership manager, and she's been with TikTok for 3 years now. And over that time, she has been awarded the 2022 Dynamic Duo Award, and she's in the spotlight for the 2023 Webby Award nomination. Congratulations on that. Thanks for being here. All right, next we have Sukhmani Khanna coming to us from Microsoft. She's Microsoft in the house. She's a cybersecurity sales director, and she's actually coming to us all the way from Dublin, Ireland. She has 15 years of experience in sales, operations, and engineering, and she's the winner of Microsoft's Pinnacle Award, which is only awarded to its top sales talent. Congratulations, and thank you for joining us. And then last but not least, we have Nadina Perera. Okay, coming to us from Braze. She's an enterprise account executive, and she's coming from Boston, Massachusetts. Nadina has her MBA from Duke, and she's been an enterprise seller for 10 years now. Her goal is to retire early so that she can spend more time with her 2 kids and get back to her true passion, which is social work. Thank you for joining us, Nadina. All right, so we're going to kick things off, and I'm actually going to go directly to Nakea for this first question. Okay. So you're in brand partnerships at TikTok, specifically in the social space, driving business growth. You started your career in digital media, then moved to account management, now in brand partnerships. Yeah. When you think about the journey from where you started to where you are today, can you talk to us about some of the challenges and obstacles that you faced, and then more importantly, what you did to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. As you just said, I did a lot of pivoting in my career to end up in brand partnerships, but when I started in my journey, I was here in New York City, and this is a tough city to really make it in the industry. And so what I found in a lot of my journey is that I had different managers that would come in and out, and I felt like I had to keep restarting with them to prove like this is the work that I did in order to get to the next spot. So I kind of kept feeling like I was doing this stuck move where it was like I'm starting over, the goalpost kept moving, and I didn't feel like I was really progressing the way that I needed to. However, I leveraged my network. The great thing when I lived in New York is that you can meet so many different people who are working at different companies in the industry. And so I really just relationship builded during that time. And I expressed like the things that I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And every role that I got from that point forward was based on a connection that I had made, so a referral into my next role. And it's just so important to really collaborate your way up, continue to keep your connections, continue to stay in contact with them, because you never know who's gonna be the vessel to open up that next opportunity.
Yeah.
And I also had to bet on myself. Like, it can get very discouraging when you keep having to start over with a new manager and prove out your worth and show them your value. But I had to believe that, like, I know the vision for my life, and God didn't put me in this position to not succeed and see myself through those things. So I think, you know, taking some time and being able to reflect, go to therapy is very important. Talk to somebody else, you know, let them know what's going on, and really using those tools and resources to be able to help you through those tough times, because sometimes you can get in your own way. And so really leveraging that as well has been really helpful for me to get to where I am now.
Yeah, completely understand that. I have a similar story. In my last company, the first year I was in the role, I had 5 different managers, 5 managers. And I had a great mentor at the time, and I had talked to her about it, and I said, you know, how am I gonna be able to build relationships with them? How am I gonna be able to put up for a promotion if I'm going to a new manager every couple of months? And it was similar to, you know, your story in terms of trying to build relationships. My mentor said, put together a brag book. Keep track of all of your accomplishments so that when you go to another manager, you can show them exactly what you've done over the past couple of months. So I completely relate to that as well.
And speaking to that too, like knowing how to communicate your value. When you're going into these different positions, like I pivoted a lot. Like she told you, I started in digital media, moved to account management, and now I'm in brand partnerships doing sales at one of the biggest companies in tech. And so one of the things that I had to do when I went into my sales role was communicate why I thought I was best for that position, how I was going to be able to offer value, and how I was going to be able to communicate with clients and build those relationships. And so I think me really understanding my own personal narrative and communicating that out to someone else so that they could believe you. Because at the end of the day, when we're selling, you have to sell yourself first for somebody else to believe that you can go out in the field and sell that product to a partner or a client.
Yeah. So I'm going to pivot to you, Mindy. You're in the SMB sales space, leading a team of over 100 AEs, first line and second line leaders. When you think about being an up-and-coming leader in sales, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think for me, it is all about the people. So you said in my bio, like my intro, that culture and people is really important. And it really is. Like, I'm actually very honored to be here and to be on this stage. But if I'm being honest, I would have in the past kind of minimized it, and I would have found reasons to say, oh, well, they asked me for this or that. But I've really made a conscious decision to really own it and to say, like, I'm very proud and I've accomplished a lot. And it takes a lot for me to say that, but I have. And so as I look back at my career, I had a lot of challenges. I was always the only one who looked like me in the room, always. And so I think what it means to me is being able to pave the way for others. My teams are always the most diverse, and we always perform really strong. And so yes, the first time it's always, oh, well, they probably got lucky, and she probably got lucky. And I'm used to being underestimated, but I love being kind of walking in the room and then kind of rolling their eyes and then being able to come back and say, well, no, we did it, and we're here for a reason. So just paving the way and really having to be able to build those strong teams is what I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, and I noticed that with a lot of other women, we don't want to talk about ourselves. We don't want to brag or talk about our accomplishments. Men have no problem doing that at all. They would say whatever they need to say to get the job. You know? So I see that a lot, so I appreciate your perspective there.
Yeah.
Next, I'm going to go over to Sukhmani. To kind of piggyback off of that, you've been successful in your career at Microsoft. You worked your way up from being a test engineer into sales to be a sales director. We probably have some people in the audience that are maybe in individual contributor roles that are interested in getting into sales leadership, people leadership. What does that path to sales leadership look like?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Natasha. I would say there are, I think, two aspects. The path that has sort of gotten me where I've reached to a sales director position, and the path that I'm seeking ahead. In terms of the path that's gotten me here, I think that one thing that's worked really well for me is really defining the goals for myself and then going back and working towards those goals. So a few years ago, I met this mentor of mine, and this was when I was switching from an individual contributor to a people manager role, and you talked about that bit. So I went up to her and I said, look, I'm really looking to be a people manager. And she said, great, so who have you told about this ambition of yours? And there was like this awkward silence for a moment because I hadn't really spoken to anyone about this. And I said, no one. I just made this assumption that people knew that I wanted to be a people manager. I didn't have to go and tell them or carry a board saying I want to be a people manager. So she said, have you told your boss that you want to be a people manager? And this is the person who sits right next to me. And I would say I spent half a day in meetings with this person, but I hadn't actually ever told him that I wanted to be a people manager. So I actually set up a formal meeting with this person and reached out and shared that I wanted to be a people manager. And what do I need to do? Tell me. And he told me 3 things. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, I have an opening on my team. Have you applied for it? And I said, no. So he said, go ahead and apply for it. And this is the amazing thing about sharing about your ambition with others, because 2 months later, I got that people manager position. So I think that was one of the things that has sort of worked really well. Yeah. I think we keep our ambitions and our goals to ourselves. I think it's very important that we share them, especially with potential hiring managers. Yeah. So I think that's one thing that has really worked for me in the path of sales leadership, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. How many of you are having regular career conversations with your leaders? Yeah, it's something that I wasn't doing. I learned that from one of my mentors. She was like, you need to be, if you're looking for a promotion, you need to be meeting with your manager every month, not your traditional one-on-one, but a conversation directly related to your career. So I would recommend that each of you definitely take that on and have those conversations so that, to your point, your leaders know what you're looking for. They know what next step you're trying to get to, because if you don't tell them, then they don't know. I want to stay with you, Sukhmani. In addition to that, I'm sure in the audience we have a diverse group of people in various points within their careers, and they maybe want to know how to really advance their career. If they're looking to go to the next level, what is it that they want to do? So when I think about for myself, I always set out a goal for myself in terms of what that next step is. I start with defining what does success look like for me. Is it moving up an individual contributor path? Is it moving into people leadership? Is it going to a different company? I start with defining what success looks like for Natasha, and then I determine what goals I need to set for myself and what that path is to get to those goals. So when you think about that, Sukhmani, in terms of being able to advance one's career trajectory, what are some of the keys or things that people can focus on when they're thinking about that?
So if I just talk about my career, Natasha, I think, so I've been with Microsoft for 15 years. The first 10 years were relatively slow. I did not make a lot of progress, but I kind of gained a lot of progress in the last 5 years. And if I look back and think to what really changed, my current manager, I've been with him for now 4 or 5 years, I think. I started doing something like a structured career development conversation. Like he makes sure he has a scheduled quarterly check-in with me. And when I started doing that, and you've talked about this as well, about doing it, but when he did it the first time, he sent me a PowerPoint template and asked me to write down and fill everything. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. I know where I'm going. I don't need to put it down into a PowerPoint slide. But it can be amazing, the difference it can make when you write something down. Knowing you want to get to be a CEO, or a vice president, it's very different to actually taking the time, and when you write it down and say, I want to be a sales director in the next 3 to 5 years, and sharing that with your manager, in a one-on-one conversation, I think that really, I would say, changed the game for me. Because firstly, it made it real for myself, Secondly, it kind of made it real for the manager as well, because it's being very vocal on, okay, I need your help to get to a sales director position, and now I need to get to a general manager position in the next 3 to 5 years. So I think that's the most important thing. The other thing is I spend a lot of time in self-reflection. So in that same slide, the middle section is all about development areas. And I go very well prepared to that meeting. I've spent a lot of introspection time thinking on, okay, what is it my role models are doing better? What is it my peers are doing better? What is it that I really need to build on? It could be a variety of different things. It could be a mix of technical skills, but it could also be communication skills and other soft skills that I need to build on. I'm really introverted, so as I'm rising up in my career, I'm having to invest in building my leadership style and my communication style, I would say. So going to those meetings, which are very structured, but going very well prepared, setting a goal, like I said earlier, and then really going behind that goal, I think those are the things that have really helped me accelerate, I would say, my career.
Awesome, thank you. Nadina, I'd love to learn from you from an AE perspective. When you think about keys to your success, you've been an enterprise seller for 10 years now. What advice would you give to others who are interested or want to be rising stars within their industries?
I think there's a number of things. So, being a rising star in any industry, I think, comes with a few different factors. First being confidence. So I think, especially for most of us in the room, when we're joining a new team, right, we're probably the only one that looks like us, right? And so that comes with its own set of expectations. And having the confidence and just owning who we are, I think, makes a huge difference. We bring something different to the table, and bringing that perspective, I think, is really important and helps you not, stand down, but stand out. So I think that's one thing. The next is building relationships. So networking within your own team. So understanding, what's important to other people. In sales, it's always a team sport, right? And I think one thing that women especially do really well is, that EQ part of it, so the emotional part of it, and just understanding what's important to you, how can I help you succeed, and building that network out, because that's what's really going to move you forward in sales. And then, I think lastly, it's probably just continuously trying to educate yourself, and not stopping ever, right? So looking for new ways to make yourself better. In sales, there's so many different opportunities to do that. So I think those three I would really focus on.
Yeah, awesome. So Nakea, I want to pivot a little bit to you. When you think about coming into a role and really setting yourself apart from your peers, what are some of the ways that you've done that in the past?
Yeah. I can speak specifically at TikTok. Everybody that does probably know me here from the organization. I'm very vocal, and I think you have to own your voice and be okay with showing up as who you are. Whether I've met you when I first started in 2020 to all the way to today, somebody's coming up to me being like, oh, I know who you are. I've seen you here or there, and that's because I've owned my voice. I've been authentic, and I've always raised my hand to participate. There's your job, and then there's the culture of the company. And so how do you integrate yourself into the culture? How do you become a part of that company? How do you build that up? It was very difficult to do in a pandemic. I'm sure everybody was at home behind Zoom trying to meet their new colleagues and not really having that connection. And I think what I was able to do was really lean into ERGs, like our Black X ERG, be able to find the meeting of the minds with other sellers and figure out what's working for your clients, what's not working, being able to figure out how to use the internal systems to work in your favor. So I think you mentioned it earlier, Natasha, about we need to advertise our wins. There's a lot of messaging going on, a lot of offering updates, policy updates, costs, whatever the case may be in our fields as sellers. But like, in order to get in front of those leaders that you want to really make a statement that I'm doing this hard work every day. I'm hustling, I'm grinding, I'm getting to the bag, I'm getting to the money, I'm trying to hit my goals. But at the end of the day, they don't know that unless you're advertising it to them. So you have to take that extra little second, write that 10-minute little Slack or whatever, and say, this is the great work that we did on this team. Put it out there, because then your name is going to continue to pop up. People are going to start to recognize you, and then it's going to be like, oh, like I saw you did this great work. That's awesome. You got to start to be your own like PR and marketing internally, because we're already going out and selling, right? We're already going out and making sure that we know the product and know it in and out. But you also got to know yourself in and out and make sure that your leadership knows what you're doing in and out. And so that has been really helpful as a rising star in my position at TikTok, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to own my voice and not feel like I have to be anybody else but myself.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I was just having a conversation with one of my workmates, Carrie, about that as well, showing up as your authentic self. And I know sometimes it can be challenging. I know earlier in my career, I didn't always feel like I could show up as my authentic self. You know, I'm to a point now where I'm comfortable doing that, but as a Black woman, you don't always feel that way. So I think it's super important that, you know, you're able to do that and you feel comfortable with the people around you being able to be transparent and authentic with them.
I mean, it's harder to sell yourself as somebody that you're not.
Yeah.
So I'd rather be myself. It's easier to come to work every day and be my authentic self.
Absolutely.
You know, talk to my clients. They know when I get on a Zoom call or I go meet them in person, they're like, oh, this is Nakea. Like, we know we can hear her from down the hallway.
Yeah.
I am loud. You know what I mean? I may be, you know, that person, but I want you to know me. I want you to know that you hear me, you know, and that my voice is not silenced. I have an opportunity to say what I need to say, that there's a respect level, there's a trust, and that I feel valued. And so to be able to have that, it's been easier at this point in my career to do that, and then before when I was trying to mimic other people and what they were doing, because I thought that that was the pathway to success versus just trusting that I have it in me. I just got to lean into that.
Absolutely. Love that. 100%. Yep. Mindy, I'd love to get your perspective on that as well. When you think about the skills and abilities that set a rising star apart from their peers, what would you say some of those are from your perspective?
Yeah, from a leadership perspective, so I've managed a lot of account executives over the years, and if I had to drill down on like a couple key things that I noticed the most between those top performers, one is their thirst for knowledge. They always want to grow and get better. And they know that the skills they have today is not going to be enough for tomorrow. The industry is always changing, customers are always changing, the business is always changing. So they're constantly making sure that they're abreast of that and that they're well prepared. So I definitely think that's one, is that thirst for knowledge. And then I think the second thing, if I had to narrow it down, it's consistency. Anyone can be at the top 1 month.
Yeah.
Anyone can have, you know, a big sale and one good sale. But the top reps are at the top consistently for a reason. And it's discipline. They do the right things consistently. And I remember reading a quote that really stuck with me, and it said, you don't have to be extraordinary, you just have to do the ordinary extra. So it's those basic fundamentals, sticking with them day in and day out, doing it when it's not fun, doing it when it's, you know, there's no recognition and you're behind the scenes. But if you do that consistently, you stick with your sales process, you do the same things you got to do every day, the results will come. That quota will get hit, I guarantee you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I completely agree with that as well. Talk to me about, we've talked a lot about mentorship, sponsorship. I would love to hear from you and Sukhmani as well, when you think about the role that mentors and sponsors have played in your career. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wish I had sought out a mentor more in my career. And I tell people to do it, and I try and mentor others. But I will say that I've had a sponsor who did, you know, they really helped me. He really helped me and doesn't look anything like me. He's the person everyone's telling you that is usually in the room, right? Yeah. And he saw the value that I brought. And when I wasn't in the room, he advocated for me. And I still reach out to him. We're not even at the same company anymore. But he's someone who I really had a pivotal part in my career. He was a big part of why I left the large company I was at and made a tough decision to do that. Because I knew that I had his support, because I knew I had someone who was going to be a good sponsor for me. And it was the best decision that I made. So that really was a pivotal part of my career.
Yeah. Sukhmani?
I would say, and we were all chatting about mentorship and advocates inside in the green room before coming in here. I would say on mentorship, my approach has been a little more, rather than like a consistent mentorship with one person, I seek people based on what I'm looking for at that point of time in my career. Like, so if I'm, right now, I feel like I need to build on, and learn how to be, a more extroverted person, or just depending on maybe work on my communication style, then I'll go behind and look for some, leader who's probably very seasoned and good at that and try and follow them around. Maybe even one coffee conversation is sometimes enough. You don't need, sometimes people think for mentorship you need a recurring series. I think even one coffee conversation could really help you. But I think advocates is something that we all need to invest in. That is something that I've personally invested a lot in. I have one of my advocates here in the room, Michelle. She's amazing. She's really helped me a lot. But I think a lot of people during the day were talking about this. So let's suppose you work really hard and your boss believes in you and he's probably putting your name forward for a promotion. But the table at which he's talking about your promotion, you need supporters on that table. So it's very important that you put the thought in on who's sitting, who has a seat at that table, and then try and invest in projects where you can probably showcase your work to some of those other stakeholders as well. So when someone says, Sukhmani's fantastic, I think we should put her up for this award or for this role, it's not just my boss saying, but I think there are a few other people who chime in, because that's when it adds credibility to even what my boss is saying, and it makes his life much more easier. So I would say invest sort of a very conscious effort in building advocates, I would say. I think they're a critical part to anyone's success.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I always get the question, how do I find a mentor? Where do I get a sponsor from? And for me, it's always been organic relationships. People that I've worked with, ERG groups that I've been a part of, that I built my network and met senior leaders through those types of opportunities. So I think it's important that you think about being a part of different types of organizations, that you're putting yourself out there, building your network so that you can have those opportunities to meet potential mentors and sponsors in your career.
And if I could add one thing to that, I think, is also just always seek out feedback. I cannot stress that enough, because you have to know from how others perceive you and what you can do to develop and get better. It's the best thing. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't want to hear it and you're gritting your teeth and you're having to shut your mouth and hear it. But it's what you need to hear to fix it. So always seek that feedback.
Yeah. Nadina, I want to go to you. So when you think back to earlier in your career and you were establishing yourself as an expert in your field, what were some of the things that you did to establish yourself that way early on?
So I think early on, in any role that I've had, I think learning the product pretty quickly, I think helps you gain that confidence to be able to talk to other people about it. Again, having confidence, just, even to say that you don't know something is also really important and establishes that credibility, especially in conversations with customers. And then, again, just making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you, because in any new role, that's how anything gets done is as a team. And so I think those are probably the areas that I would focus on the most. And then again, just leaning into the fact that we all bring something really unique to the table, and enhancing that and bringing that forward because we have a different perspective. Out of curiosity, show of everyone on the team, in the room here, who is the only person that's black or brown on their team.
I should put up my hand as well. What about that? Almost.
Yeah, it's usually like that.
Yeah, it is usually like that. So it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because it makes me think back. My first job in tech sales was as a solution engineer. We got some solution engineers in the room. Okay, pre-sales, consultants, sales engineers. It's the role with 1,000 names, right? And so I had just joined a new company, and we were all going out to California to do training on a new product, all of the SEs and the AEs and leadership. And so we go into the training, it's about 200 people there, and as a black person, you go into a room like that and you're like, anybody else black in this? And so there was one other woman, and we caught eyes, and she came over to me and she was like, you must be new because I'm usually the only one.
Yeah.
And so we, just talked about that for a minute. She actually became one of my mentors later on. But it was an interesting moment because it was a foreshadowing of, my career after that point, because I found myself to be the only one on many occasions, the only one on the team, in the room, and so I'd just love to learn from the panel when we think about how we can increase the representation of women of color in sales, how do we do that? So I would love to learn from each of you your thoughts on that. We can start with you, Mindy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more sponsorship for sure.
Yeah.
I think we need to make sure that we have that support and that sponsorship in order to make sure that our names are spoken, that we are building those diverse teams. So I think that's something that has to change for sure, is more of that. And then I think the supporting each other is just so critical. And there have been so many instances where I think there were more opportunities for in my career to be supported by others that looked like me, right? It's similar to you. I usually would walk in and be the only one. I remember working with 16 regional managers, and every single one of them was a white older man. And I thought, gosh, this is crazy. So when there was someone who looked like me, or when I see someone, like, we should be helping each other and supporting each other and making sure that we're propelling each other's voice and bringing each other up. It doesn't have to be competition. We can rise together.
Yeah, and that's why I love events like this, because I can feel that. You feel the support, you feel the love, and it's an important opportunity for us to get that from one another.
For me, I feel like we need more black women in leadership. I have not seen a lot of black women in sales leadership. And so it's really hard at times when you're envisioning yourself being that person, and don't get me wrong, we can trailblaze our way there, but when we don't have a lot of representation at the top. So that mindset of, well, there's not, I think last night at the gala, someone said, like, there's a perception that there's not a lot of qualifiable black and brown people to be in these roles, and that's not true.
Not true.
And there's a lot of people that I believe, even in this room, that have the skill sets. It's like if you invest in your talent while they're in your company and help them move into the leadership positions, then you are showing that you are putting your money where your mouth is. I'm investing you to work here, but I also want to see you develop in your career and rise up. And I think we don't have a lot of that, and so the retention rate in general across the industry, it's just a lot of people trying to find those opportunities to continue to rise up, and so I think that's something there. And then also too, as a black woman, I went to a predominantly white university, so being the only came at me very fast. So when I went into corporate America, I was like, this is nothing new. I kind of got my 4 years of training doing that. So I came into it like, this is what it's gonna be like, but I do believe that you can, have that as a crutch, or you can have that as an advantage. You can be that only person in the room, but you can bring somebody along with you and pull them up with you and pave that way to prove out that, no, I'm here, but I'm here for a reason, and there are other people that I can bring into the conversation to change this dynamic that's happening. So those are two things.
Yeah. I love that you say that, because I went to a predominantly white college institution as well. And I did that because my parents said, you need to do this because you have to prepare yourself to be in corporate America. And I'm like, I wanted to go to a HBCU. And I missed my opportunity to go to a HBCU. But,
Me too, girl. I look back, but they gave me a full ride. I said, I'm gonna be here for the check.
Sukhmani.
I think I would sort of agree with what Nakea said as well, but we all need to keep using our voice. I would say, at least I feel like I've built a lot of credibility and people are in a position to listen to me, so I need to use my voice. But more importantly, I think we must keep fighting for the cause. I think this is really important. And I think we need to think beyond ourselves. And we don't need to just ask others on what they're doing to change. Like, it's good to ask corporations and companies on what they're doing to change. But I think what we can do to change, I think that's really important. And in the last 1 year or so, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is my purpose on how do I really make a difference for the generation that's going to come after me, so that when they look at the leadership, they see like a very normal, a mixed, people of color, people like women, very balanced leadership. It's not just one typical style of leadership that they see. So me getting there to that position will change the face of leadership when they're looking, like when the next generation is looking to it. So I think all of us in the room here, I think we need to get there to the top so that the generation coming after us, when they see a very different face of leadership. I think that's really important.
100%. Love that. Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's really no representation in executive leadership teams that at least I've been on. So I think it has to start there. Beyond that, I think we need to start education earlier also for women of color all over the place. And I think going to recruiting events at universities and just us going out there to say like, hey, we are doing it, I think that's important, because once you see yourself on a stage somewhere, then you say, okay, I could do that too. But I think in the traditional sense, like, a lot of kids just don't know, and they don't know that like sales is good, right? It sounds so scary when you say like, oh, I'm in sales, like, oh, that must be so hard, that's. Are you like knocking on people's doors? Are you constantly seeing rejection? Like, yeah, it is constant rejection, but at the same time, it's so fulfilling as well. And women of color can do it, and I think that education piece needs to be there. Yeah,
100%. Well, thank you so much, ladies. You are amazing. Keep doing the work. You're awesome. Keep being trailblazers in your careers. Thank you for joining me for this discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone.